Welcome to the Mighty Emotions Podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm a certified emotions coach, and I teach you how to respond better to your emotions so you can feel better in your life. My mission is to show you how to work with your emotions to become more emotionally resilient. Your emotions are not designed to overpower you, they're designed to empower you. On this podcast, I share what our emotions are, how to understand them and work with them, and the tools you need to reclaim your power and get unstuck from emotional pain so you can find fulfillment in your life again. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Emotions Podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you that takes the time to listen, and I really, really hope that these episodes bring you a lot of value. I've had some amazing guests recently, so if you haven't listened to those episodes, I encourage you to go and check them out. Candace Taylor, Emily Rowan, Jessica and Samantha from And Life Happened, and there's so many amazing guests to come. So I hope you've been enjoying those conversations where we just get real and honest. That's what this podcast is all about, is a chance for us to just have honest conversations, for us to just acknowledge our honest humanity. Mighty Emotions was born out of there being this need for personal development work to have more empathy and to involve more self-compassion. I think that when we're on this journey of growing, of getting better, of developing new skills, new habits, etc., that we can kind of be hard on ourselves. And a lot of us, especially those of us who have this real honest reaction to life, like we can't really hide what we feel. We feel things really deeply, intensely, and we always have, and maybe we've been shamed for it. A lot of us, because of being shamed for it, learn to put on a mask and to not be honest about what we're feeling with other people. But eventually, over time, that led to us not even being honest with ourselves. And it led to us having a lot of anxiety because there's a lot of emotions we suppressed, our honest emotions that we suppressed. And it led to us, you know, talking down to ourselves and shaming ourselves and beating ourselves up when we're having hard moments. And so we find personal development to be this amazing thing where we can outgrow ourselves, where we can become better people, different versions of ourselves, better versions of ourselves. And we're all looking to just escape our humanness, right? And so I myself, kind of veering away from that world, it wasn't so much that I gave up on personal development. We're growing and developing every day. But it's when I found how to use my emotions as a personal development tool that I actually grew. And I grew in a beautiful way. And I grew without hurting myself mentally, right? Because on the outside, we could be changing these habits and we can be taking these actions and we can be working out and we can be doing all the things on the outside, but we can feel miserable on the inside. We can feel awful. We can feel like I'm writing this gratitude list, but I don't feel grateful. I feel numb. Or I'm taking this action and I'm working out every day, but I feel so empty inside. Like there's just this void in me. And then we can think, well, something must be wrong with me because other people are taking all this action and doing all these things and they're happy. And what we're really searching for in this personal development work, in this healing work, in whatever it is happiness. We're searching for happiness. And I wanted to hop on today and share that resilience is important, but so is happiness. You know, initially I started talking about emotional resilience because it's so important that we are able to navigate emotional turbulence and not get bogged down by it and not get stuck or trapped in it. Absolutely. And life is going to throw curveballs at us and things are going to happen. And we're going to need to know, okay, how do I get through this to the other side? How do I overcome this? How do I not let this keep me stuck? How do I not let this hold me back? And so having that resilience, I mean, human beings, we are incredibly resilient creatures. If we look at the atrocities that have happened to humans in history, and I'm a history nerd, so I've read and I've seen and I've heard the accounts of the awful, awful things that have happened in human history that they don't teach you in a history class. Like, you really have to, do your own digging. But there are some horrible things that human beings have lived through. And then there's been all the generational trauma that's come out of that, right? So, yes, we were able to be resilient. Yes, we were tenacious. Yes, we were able to get to the other side. But what were the scars that we were left with? And what were we doing to heal those scars? Or were we just leaving those wounds open? Or were we just constantly, distracting ourselves or hurting ourselves or behaving in these destructive ways because we didn't know what to do about these wounds? And maybe the wounds were left there by the generations before us, right? Maybe it was our parents with the wounds or our grandparents with the wounds that left us in this place of not knowing how to really feel good or live a life that feels good, because it's always about this struggle, or there's always some kind of emotional weight on our shoulders, whether it's that we care for certain people who are struggling, whether it's we're struggling ourselves and there's no one who has the capacity to care for us. There's so many different ways it can manifest, and we try to talk about that on this podcast, right, to get a little bit of clarity around it, to alleviate some of that emotional burden, for sure. But it's so important that we don't we don't forget the happiness piece, because we can be resilient and happy, right? We don't need to just be grinding it out and pushing through. It's like, if that unhappiness is showing up, that is valid, and that is something that we are allowed to pause and reflect and be like, okay, why is this showing up? Why is this here? And a lot of times what I'll see people do is say, well, I don't really know why, so there must not be a reason, and I'm just going to wait for it to pass, or I'm just going to, go do something else, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes that's needed, but a lot of the times we do need to figure out why. There is a reason why. There's always a reason why. And the simplest way that I can put it, and that I do put it, is that there's a need that isn't being met, right? Or we're out of alignment in some way. And what I mean when I say out of alignment is, if I love blue, okay, this is a really silly example, but stay with me. If I love the color blue, if the color blue makes me feel happy, and I live in a home where there's no blue and everything is black, I'm going to feel that misalignment. I'm going to feel that, like, black isn't my favorite color, but I'm surrounded by black 24/7. Like, I'm not going to feel great about that, right? If I'm indifferent to black, then it won't matter. But if I love blue and I'm surrounded by blue 24/7, I'm just going to feel that peace, that inner peace, that joy, that gratitude. It's just going to be a natural response. Like, our emotions are instincts, right? There are animal instincts. They're letting us know, yes, this works for us. No, this doesn't work for us. Recently, I've been struggling in certain ways when it comes to my future and the future of my family and the things that I want long term. And when you're someone who's lived through what I've lived through, anyone who's experienced PTSD, which I've gratefully recovered from, but anyone who's really had a hard life, it can be so absurd to think about a future. Like, you're just thinking about tomorrow. You're just thinking about the next minute. You're not thinking about 10 years from now what you want, or 20 years from now what you want. And it's been a long journey for me to overcome and heal from so many things, to get to a place where I have this space. And I'm so, so grateful every day that I have this space to think about the future, right? To not just be like, well, what do I want in a year? Yeah, we can think about that too. But I'm now at a space where I'm like, what do I want in 20 years? What do I want in 10 years? What do I want in 30 years? Trying to think more long term, to see if the actions that I'm taking today are going to be fruitful in that direction, right? And I hope that one of those things is this podcast and everything that I'm doing with Mighty Emotions, and teaching people how to have more empathy and compassion for themselves on their self-development journey, right? Because it's where I'm at, and it's so important that we don't forget that we're humans, and to treat ourselves with that kindness, right? But thinking long term now is just, it's a new thing for me. There's like this learning curve that comes with it. And I'm exploring, getting more and more honest with myself, which is something we really got to practice every day. And thinking about, what matters and what's important and what do I want to experience and what do I want in my life. And I'm grateful that so much of it already exists in my life today and that there's not this huge void like there used to be. But that's because I've learned to listen to those emotional cues that are telling me when something is right for me and when something is not right in my life. And when we are so focused on just pushing through and being resilient and getting to the next step and getting to the next place, we're not giving ourselves that grace. We're not giving ourselves that space, but we're expecting ourselves to be happy. We're saying, well, I've survived this. I've overcome it. Yeah, but it leaves scars. It leaves scars. And we don't even realize sometimes how deep the scars are, how deep the wounds are, I should say, until many, many years later when we're dealing with the effects of the scars. And by that, I mean, if something happened to us in our childhood, maybe it wasn't even extreme, especially if it wasn't extreme. Maybe the relationship we had with our parents never fulfilled us. And we always just felt this lack of connection there because, maybe they're in their heads all the time. Maybe they were working all the time. I say this as a mother now, and I recognize this in myself. There are times my daughter is needing me and my mind is just in all these different places and I'm not able to be present with her. And so I'm really intentional to try to be present with her as much as possible. But it leaves a wound. I see it even with her as a toddler when she says, Mama, come play with me. Mama, come play with me. Or we're at the park and she's watching how other parents are interacting with their kids. She's only 2.5. But I watch and I observe and I notice that it's imprinting messages. That she's observing it and she's absorbing some information around it and she's looking for me to fill that for her. And so I make every effort, right? I make every effort that I can, but I'm a human. And so when things happen like that in our childhood where a parent doesn't show up for us in a way that we wanted them to, or we're missing something that we need, it's going to happen. We go through our lives if we never have anyone to help us process that, and by process that I mean help us to see why that affected us, how that maybe warps how we see the world, how that maybe warps our relationship with our parents. Like, that's going to show up somewhere down the line. That wound goes really deep, right? It might not be as painful. We might be able to, change our mindset, as they say. Um, oh, I'm just going to think about it differently. But you could think about it however you want. Your body knows what you feel about it, and your body is honest. Like, our minds are super powerful, but they are tricksters. Our mind is a trickster. Our mind is not always honest with us, right? Which is why our feelings aren't always honest, which is why our feelings aren't facts. But our instincts, our emotions, the sensations that we have in our body, our visceral responses or reactions to things, that's truth. Like, our body cannot lie to us. If we're in pain, we're in pain. We're not pretending to be in pain. We're physically in pain, right? It's raw, it's real, it's honest. And we learn to not listen to it. And we learn to try to just listen to our mind. And then there's this disconnect. So we're able to, just using mental willpower alone, we're able to push through. We're able to go. We're able to be tenacious. We're able to be resilient. But inside, we're eroding emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And so this is what I mean by don't forget the happiness. Like, resilience is important, but so is happiness. When you get to the other side of that difficult moment, and I have some clients, sometimes my clients will come to me when there isn't anything challenging that they're in the middle of. They're kind of just trying to heal the scars, heal the wounds of things that happened before. And that's a place that I really like to work with people because we have the space to play. We have the space to give ourselves grace. Where when we're in the midst of it, it's a lot trickier. The feelings are a lot more fresh or a lot more raw. And if we don't have practice then it's challenging to learn this new thing in the middle of the difficult moment, right? But what happens is that we can get through that, we could push through that. When we get to the other side of it, we think, oh, it's over. Phew, I'm free, I'm safe. I don't need to think about it anymore. That moment, that chapter is closed, and we forget that the wound is there and that the wound hasn't closed. And then it starts to scab over. And then things go on. We go on about our lives. And then things start to happen that start to kind of pick at that scab. You know, when you start to peel a scab, I'm a scab picker. I'm going to just, out myself right now. But life happens and it starts to pick away at that, and it exposes the wound over time. And then we find ourselves super fragile emotionally, or we find ourselves easily triggered, or we find ourselves just feeling super sensitive to things. And the thing to remember there is that it's not that something's wrong with you, right? It's not that you're broken. It's just that there's a wound that needs to heal. And so often we think we need to heal us. Like we're on this healing journey to heal us, or we're on this personal development journey to fix ourselves. We don't need to fix ourselves. We need to heal our wounds. Like we are not broken. We are not so defective. And trust me, I've done some horrific things in my life. You may see me today and, hear my podcast and all of this, but let me tell you, anyone who has been a drug addict, living on the street, doing certain things to get drugs and get money, it's not a glorified life. It's awful. The things I've seen, the people I've been around, the things I've done, the things the people I've been around have done. There's no pride in any of that for me. I'm proud of where I am today. I'm proud that I'm so far removed from that today. But the reality is that the past is ugly and messy. But it doesn't make me defective. It makes me a human being who was in a lot of pain and who had no one to help her for a really long time, and who had wounds that were scabbed and then picked at it and scabbed again. Like I was just a walking wound. Like it was unbearable. It was insufferable every day. And if you talk to anyone who is in early recovery, it feels insufferable just being alive. To hear someone say to make a gratitude list is like a slap in the face to the pain that you're feeling emotionally, that you're no longer covering up with, the drugs or with the alcohol or with whatever. Right? So it's not just about pushing through. It's not just about getting to the other side. It's about not forgetting those wounds and not forgetting that happiness is important. And the way to get to happiness is to heal those wounds. And the way to heal those wounds is to get our needs met. But in order to do that, we often first have to actually listen to the emotions that we're carrying that are showing us which needs we actually need to get met. So I just wanted to make this episode to remind you once again that you're not defective, you're not broken. If you've conquered something, if you feel like, I healed this, why do I feel like this again? I got to the other side of this. Why am I so unhappy? I did all the personal development things. I made the gratitude list every day. This, that, and the third. It's not that these things don't work, and with a lot of effort, you'll probably get some ROI. But the reality that I've experienced and that I know a lot of people have experienced and that you may be experiencing if you're really honest with yourself is that doing all these things can still have you in a place where you're so unhappy and where you don't have any joy and where you don't see the beauty in life and where you're struggling internally. But because you think these things are supposed to make you happy and you're ashamed of what you're feeling and you're ashamed to look at your emotions honestly, you wear a mask. And I'm here to tell you, you can take the mask off because there's nothing wrong with you. Those things, they help enhance your life. They can help support you in your life. But the only thing that's going to lead to the joy and the inner peace that's already within you, underneath those wounds, is to be honest with yourself. Give yourself grace, show yourself compassion, acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the wounds, acknowledge that you might have gone to the other side of those things. You might have started making better choices in your life, but we got to address the emotional pain that we're carrying, the emotional baggage that we're carrying, if we want to be happy. And if you're listening to this show, then I know you want to be happy. I know you want to be happy, and I know you want to have inner peace. And I want you to know that it's possible. Because if it's possible for me, it's possible for anyone. It's definitely possible for you. So keep going, keep getting honest with yourself, keep looking at what you're feeling, keep listening to that, keep asking those emotions. What are you trying to show me? What do I need? Do I need safety? Do I need meaning in some way? Do I need freedom? Do I need connection? Am I in a room full of black when I love blue? Do I have alignment in my life, or is something out of alignment somewhere? And what can I do to fix that? The answer will always come, but you have to be willing to ask the question. So with that, I hope that this episode brought some clarity, some value, that it helped you in some way. If it did, leave a review. Let me know. Reach out to me on Instagram at mighty_emotions. And if you haven't gotten my book yet, Outrunning Your Emotions is available now. The link will be in the description. I really hope that you read it and get some amazing self-assurance from it. That's why I wrote it, because I want you to know that once you learn to understand this stuff, the game changes. And waking up happy every day is possible. And moving through life's challenges with grace and ease is possible, right? But it's practice, and it takes learning these things, which is why I wrote it all in a book for you. So check the link in the description if you'd like to read the book. I hope you do. And with that, I will talk to you on the next episode, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean so much if you could subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends and family, and let me know what you think by going to my Instagram at mighty_emotions and connecting with me and letting me know what you loved about today's episode. It really means a lot that you support this podcast, and I love coming to you each week with a new episode. So be sure to subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care of yourself.